Hello everyone and welcome to the latest EN Engage session. I've spent a lot of time recently talking to organisers about how they are navigating through all the challenges we're experiencing. I thought it'd be really interesting to talk to somebody on slightly the other side of the fence and look at how they are going to help our industry and partner with our industry to make sure we have not only a corkingly good 2021, but and beyond. So today's guest is Jason Stead. Jason is Managing Director of EMEA Exhibitions for GES. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Ruth.
How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. You?
Excellent. Very, very lovely. Thank you for asking. You're the first person that I've interviewed who's cared about my health. Thank you. Oh. So let's kick off. I'd really be interested to get your perception on this year. There is a real worry, I think, in the industry that when that button is pressed and we are back, I call it Tsunami September. It could be earlier, it could be later. When that button is pressed, the world and his wife are going to be leaping on exhibitions. And we're going to be really challenged with our contractors, our suppliers. Can you unworry us as an industry and talk a little bit about how you see that panning out?
Yeah, I think to start with, I think there is worry out there. I'm not quite sure why there is so much worry out there. Part of it, I think, is because we've been dormant for a year as an industry. If you think about operating at scale, it's what GES does. So we've done it in the past and we can do it going forwards. And I also think that when you look at the calendar, if every show ran at 100% or more capacity, then you're right, it would be challenging, but it's not going to happen like that. We find out later today whether Boris is going to unlock us and to what degree he's going to unlock the nation and us as part of that. And then there's a cycle that plays forward in that talks to confidence, people's budgets. Do they still have the Marcom's budget to want to come and attend an event and how that will be released? So whilst I think there is a big schedule in place for the rest of the year, there was also a big schedule in place for last September, and that didn't happen. So there's still lots of things to get over before that happens. And I think the way it comes back will be phased and gradual. Not one of my clients is forecasting to me that the shows they're running for the rest of this year are 100% or more. So they're all downgraded to some degree. So I think we're well placed. We have assets and people and talent and systems to cope with that. And to make it easier, I think potentially there is an opportunity for us and for our clients to reimagine those events and to simplify what we do on the show floor. I think that's a big part of how we bring our industry back. Most people, this has been a traumatic event for people over the last year, it still is, and you don't want to introduce unnecessary complexity to traumatized people. Those been exhibitors and visitors and sponsors and etc. So there's a really brilliant opportunity here for us to reimagine and reinvent how we deliver onto the show floor, make it easy for people to come back. So when they come back, we're impressing them with how easy it is and also how it looks and feels, so that they've missed it. I think people genuinely do miss events and meeting people. It's the real thing, isn't it? This is great, but it's not like you and I having a beer or a steak or whatever we may have
never just had a beer, let's be clear.
Okay. Yes, okay.
I'm really interested in this reimagine of events, and there's something that says to me, when we've had this absence for a year, and in some cases shows may have missed 2 iterations, and when they reappear live again, actually whilst there's comfort in what we need to show that we've evolved and moved forward in that period of time, and as an industry we haven't stood still. How do you see that looking? What are the tangible things that you think that you can support our industry and our industry should be thinking about when we go forward?
Yeah, I think broadly people split into 2 camps. There's the first camp that says we could put anything up and people would just be glad to get back and meet together face to face. So it doesn't really matter what it looks like, put sawdust on the floor kind of thing. And then there's the other camp that says, actually, we're competing with many different channels now that we perhaps weren't so acute prior to COVID, and that we have to really put on a show and impress people. And I'm definitely in that latter camp. If people come back and spend budgets within our shows and want to grow their footprint and support our industry, we need to demonstrate to them that they've made the right choice. And I think we can do that in many different ways. We've talked briefly just earlier about how do we make things easier for people to come and exhibit. So do people really want to spend days looking at mains fuse ratings or spots or carpet colors or whatever it is, just the fundamental planning element of that? So how do we make that really easy for them? Which shortens their time in terms of planning. I don't think anybody enjoys really planning exhibiting at a show. If you talk to people, and I've done this in past roles, they'd rather spend more time working out how to sell more and engage with clients and consume content and all of the, nobody really looks forwards to doing the nuts and bolts of delivering an exhibition. So we could make that easier for them. And the obvious way of doing that is packaging things up. I think as people come back, budgets will be tighter, so people will be looking for ease, and they'll be looking for impact, and they'll be looking for speed. So we can tick those boxes between organisers and suppliers very easily. I think there's also things you can add in and flow over the top of that, and whether that's data and how do you capture data, how do you use that data going forwards, how do you adjust within a show whilst the show's open, and make pull all of those levers to get the best out of your 3 or 4 days that you might be putting the show on.
So you talked about things coming out of budgets over the last couple of years, and what we've seen for a number of organisers, their clients have removed that exhibition budget line. So rather than, when our industry comes back, rather than our clients having to justify why it stays in to their finance teams or to their bosses, whatever, they're actually having to justify why it goes back in. That's massive.
Yeah.
How do you think that an organisation like yours can help your clients grow back out of this?
Well, the first part of that question is it value for money to come and exhibit? And most of the time, I think it is. You don't see, we wouldn't have the size and strength of the industry we have if year after year, everybody who exhibited lost money. They come to exhibit for a reason, that's to make money and to share their brand and to educate people and to, encourage loyalty, lots of things. But there's no way we'd have an industry the size we do if we didn't meet those criteria. I think there will be clients who have found other channels and found them more successful, and there may be some degradation and attrition in terms of those people coming back, but I don't think it'll be all of them, and I certainly think the majority will come back. I spent the first half of my career in a supply chain and buying role, and I would always go to a trade show, and I was looking for things that even now I don't think I could get online, serendipity, how to find new things that I wasn't aware of. You go to a show knowing what you are aware of, and you go and see your suppliers or your customers because they're there, and it's more of a convivial environment to catch up with them, and you find new releases and stuff. But really the reason I went to shows was to find stuff that I didn't know existed. And you can't, that's quite hard online. There used to be a website called Stumble Upon. I used to quite like it. You whack in, it doesn't exist anymore, and I think it's been taken over by somebody else, but you whack into it what your interests are, and it presents you with websites that match your interests that you probably hadn't hit before. So it breaks that repetitious cycle up of how you consume stuff. And that was the nearest I got to serendipity online, if that makes sense. But I think an event is terrific for that. And also things, just meeting people and just understanding body language and trust and the nuances that you can't get in this medium. We know each other, so I know you and you know me, but had we been complete strangers, this would be more awkward than it is, and there's I think the fuse that gets lit that ends in trust is a much longer fuse when you're doing it online than you're doing it face to face. People do make more instantaneous decisions that way.
Can I push back on that?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I would have agreed with you in every way 12 months ago or even 6 months ago. But we've had so much exposure to having to work through this medium rather than sitting across a table and shaking a hand, then actually I think we're more comfortable with this now. I've made connections over the last 12 months. And actually, I'm not sure I'd recognise them in a lineup physically because I only know them in a pixelated form.
Yeah.
Do you think
I think there's two things on that. One, it's boring, isn't it? Doing this all the time. And the second thing is you're not spending any money doing this. So if I was asking you to part with £750,000, you'd probably want to meet me face to face to make sure that, you know, I presented well, my associates who are with me, how I present my brand. So I think there's two big things. I think there is just a degree of boredom and people wanting the real thing, you know, whether that's a beer or a hug or a shaking of hands or whatever. I think there's that authenticity that people want. And I think the second thing is, you know, a lot of these things involve commercial, or if you're B2B, or a personal, if you're B2C, you know, enthusiast interest, which only goes so far like this. So I'm trying to buy a new bike at the minute, and it's killing me that I can look at thousands of bikes online, but I can't ride any, you know, and I want to go and see how heavy it really feels and how, you know, just there's just lots of things that I just physically can't do like this. And I just think that multi-layering, I think actually when people come back to live, I think it will amplify what they've missed, which goes back to our original point of we better make it good, because if we get it wrong, that some people think maybe this was okay.
It's really interesting. We question ourselves in the exhibition industry about whether face-to-face, live, face-to-face, physical is right. But actually, you don't hear the concert industry saying, actually, people will want to sit at home and will want to log on and listen to Ed Sheeran. That's all I can think of. Sorry. Well, they actually want to turn up at a concert with thousands of other screaming people to see that small little Ed in the distance, because we like the experience. And I think your point is really well made. It's time for us to stop questioning. Let's just get on with this. But
it's in our nature.
Yeah,
but and it's tribal, as I was going to say.
You talked about our clients have had to find new routes to market, and there is a perception in the exhibition industry. We're not wild about hybrid, so running a physical and a digital event at the same time. And the reasons we're not wild about it twofold. One, we found almost across the board that the profile of attendees for a digital event is about 50 to 70%, and that's almost across the board, 50 to 70% different from the profile of a physical event. So why would you do the same event for two audiences? You've actually got the opportunity to service two different target groups. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which I think is relevant for this conversation, is the cost of doing a really, really good quality hybrid event. There is this perception that you need a full-blown recording studio and television cameras, and it's going to cost you a fortune. You may as well just focus on that really, really high quality physical event. How would you answer that?
I think if you take the why are we moving towards a hybridization of events? I think the answer is yes. I think it will be gradual. I don't think it will be a switch flicking exercise. I think, you know, I joined EMAP in 2009, and with Malcolm Goff at the time was talking about the 365 experience, and here we are in 2021 still talking about the 365 experience. So some of it is down to content and how it's consumed. So people are more digital savvy now, and people are more comfortable buying things unseen, you know, and depending on value, I suppose, and risk profiles. So I think there'll be a gradual move towards that, and we're seeing it now. And the amount of data that our clients want to harvest from their show sites directly influences their digital story, which will be running alongside that live event going forwards. It's important to understand your community to be able to digitize it and make it relevant to them. So I think it will happen over time. I think, what was the first part of your question?
Oh, that was so long ago, I've forgotten now. I think you've answered it perfectly. There you go. You said this was dull, but you know, I didn't realise just how dull it was. Interesting point you just made halfway through there. You talked about risk, and what's happened over the last 12 months has really shifted the focus on who is taking the risk in the whole exhibition cycle. Would you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think, like with any black swan event, nobody sees it coming. When it happens, it's traumatic, and everybody has to just do what they need to do to get through it. I think what this past year has highlighted to us is where true partnerships count, and those people who are good on their word, who may owe you money or time or resource or whatever kit, and honor those things. But also going forwards, how nobody really wants to take too much of a risk up front because it's quite unknown. It may be becoming less unknown now with vaccinations, but certainly for the past 12 months, there has kind of been this who goes first. And we're a big advocate. We're talking to all our clients at the minute, and I'm sure other suppliers are as well, as a pay-as-you-go model. And this is really about not charging anybody any more than they would normally be charged, but the rephasing of that. So you pay for resources, you consume it. And it's a question we get asked a lot in terms of how deep is your organization now after furloughs or redundancies? How quickly can you spring that back into life? The answer is we can spring it back into life really quickly, but we're not going to take the risk on that, because why would I spend a lot of money for something that somebody could cancel fairly short notice and I couldn't recover any of that cash? It doesn't make any sense to do that. And I don't think the supply base has had like everyone, I suppose, has had a tough time over the past 12 months. The difference with most suppliers is we're overhead heavy. So we carry a lot of kit that the industry needs and wants to liven back up again. And we have to pay for that, which we accept. That's part of our role. But equally, it's not for us to take the risk on organisers' events going forward. So it's a very equitable, in our view, solution whereby we pay for what we consume. The model doesn't change in terms of the overall pricing. It just gates it in a more equitable way.
And it's interesting. We always talk about the exhibition industry. One of its great strengths being there's a lot of money up front. So we'll take whatever percent, 60% rebook on site with the following win, maybe more, maybe less. And that's great because that will bankroll a lot of activity through the year. And are you saying actually that hasn't been in the past an equitable position throughout the industry? And do you're seeing that rebalance and a bit of right sizing there?
Pre-COVID, it was always there, but you probably didn't notice it. If you think of the frequency of events running and the size of them, your cash flow is such that as one was waiting payment, another one was paying, so cash flow was okay. It's only when you see a hard stop, like this time last year, where you realize how crazy that was. So I think perhaps the whole industry thrives on cash flow, which is why it hurts everybody so much when that really gets cut off. I mean, right now, cash is more important than revenue. So it's an important thing to acknowledge, and it's an important thing to redress going forwards.
Thinking about how the organisers and contractors and suppliers work with each other going forwards. I've seen examples of where great partnerships have resulted in whoever you're working with going the extra mile for you and really, really, really pulling your show home, whereas people that are more contemptuous of their partnerships, pay a price for that. Yeah. Thinking about, we're all going to be really busy once we're up and running. How can we be working better with organisations like you? How can we get that balance better from being a service to being a partner? What are the things that you want to look for that will make us more successful as an industry?
Well, Ruth, I've been going on about this for a while now. I'm a supply chain guy at heart, and I genuinely feel that some of our knowledge in the supply base is untapped. I was talking to Laurie Hoinks about this last week, and Laurie's on the same page. She understands the value of great partnerships. So, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to encourage that more. We're here to, our strapline, our what we push to our clients is grow together. It's very hard. I think in the past, perhaps, the supply chain and the contractors have been seen as a place to go to squeeze a bit more savings out of. Well, that's not there anymore. So you can make it cheaper by not doing something, which potentially damages the look and feel of your show and the brand and your retention ability, or you can work closer with your suppliers to work out how you can grow your business more. I mean, I'm confident GES can make any business more money than we can save them, in terms of working with us, and that's the change of, it's almost a 180, but it's a big change and it's very, very doable. So I think partnerships are important. We also like to be set homework. We'd like to challenge organisers and say, have you thought about this? But equally, we'd like organisers to say to us, here's where we'd like to get to in 5 years' time. How might we get there? And work that through as a partnership. And that we've talked about creative pragmatism for a long time. So just in terms of how do you get that back on the show floor? One of the things we're encouraging all our clients to do is to work with us to simplify the offer to the clients, to the exhibitors, or the visitor experience. And that might be, packaging things up. That might be simplifying the touch points. And I think by doing that, organisers will pull more cash in. They'll see more value come out of their brand because they'll capture more of it. Whereas at the minute, I think there's quite a lot of spend leakage.
And I love this concept of simplification. I have to say, as an aside, I talk to so many organisers, and there's this energy and noise. And actually, it's really reassuring to talk to you and just get this very calm, pragmatic view, very structured and organised, which is exactly what the industry needs. So thank you, by the way. That's as an aside. Thinking about how we get people back into shows. And I was chatting to somebody the other day who's saying, we're all worried. It's a health and safety field day. We're going to be temperature checks and ECGs and everything in order to be able to get people back COVID safe. And yet we don't see shopping centres and railway stations having to do the same. And essentially, we're no different than a shopping centre. We are a shopping centre.
Yeah.
What's your thinking about that balance between uber safety, and it may be wiped out by vaccines, I don't think so, but uber safety versus just getting on and doing the job? Where do you think that balance will land?
Well, you're right, it is a balance. The balance really vaccination will help, but it's not going to solve it, is it? 2 weeks ago we ran Magic and Off Price in Orlando, and it was a test on the door event, which was good. It's not without challenges depending on how many people turn up at the same time, but testing is going to be a key part of the reopening of what we do for however long we do it, and whilst COVID exists, possibly, who knows, forever. So we have solutions. We were part of the All Secure test last year, so we did the registration for that through Visit. We learned a lot of lessons from that. We passed the test, which is great. We're looking at things like, how do you link testing to registration to entry? So potentially, if you get that right, you could enter a show and beyond the door, for all intents and purposes, it's more or less the same as it was in terms of distancing and layout, because when you're in, it's a safe event. It's only when you're not sure who's coming in that you have to go to extremes with 5-meter gangways and crazy things like that. It's theatres with 4 seats, and it doesn't make any sense. So I think the hard work has to be done prior to entry, and technology will help us unlock that.
The early indications from the government are that testing at events is going to be automatic. It's going to be part and parcel of what we're going to have to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm really interested in the Orlando event. For many reasons, not least the three-way partnership we saw between 3 very competitive organisations. Really interested from your perspective how that works, not the partnership, but the actual delivery on the day. Can you talk us through practically how it worked?
I can talk you through it theoretically how it works, because a big chunk of this is sat with the government, and whether they are, and the biggest hurdle in here is data protection of medical records. So in theory, how it works is you take a test prior to the event happening. That test is linked to your registration, saying you're negative. You turn up on the door, prove that, and you enter the show. Once you're in the show, there's lots of things you can do in there in terms of heat mapping, capacity planning. We have software to say how many people are in the venue or in a hall right now, so counting people in and out. And that then augments and makes it safer still. How likely is that to happen in the medium term? I can't answer that question. That's a government question. Logic would say, regardless of vaccination, you should proceed with what they're doing now. Until we're talking to people about this, because this might not be the first pandemic we experience. How do we know there's not going to be another one? And this is why the Asian nations are far better equipped to deal with it than perhaps we were, because they've been here before with SARS, etc. So I think it will happen. The pace at which it happens, I'm not in control of.
Okay. One last question then. We've seen similar organisations to yours disappearing, and we've seen contractors and suppliers who've not made it through the challenges of 2020 and early 2021. We're going to be relying on organisations like yours. I'm assuming GES is still going to be here second half of the year. Can we rely?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, don't think that last year was a walk in the park for us. It wasn't. It was painful, like everybody else, felt the pain. But we took investment in the latter half of last year. That's given us great opportunity, not only to grow the business, but also in terms of cash flow, and allowed us to go long on it. And I think that's important for the industry, which is also why we're not, we're having sensible conversations with clients about going forwards. There is a school of thought that said, should we not just put the prices up 25-30%? I haven't given anybody sticker shock in this. I'm asking for a deeper commitment and a deeper partnership. And if that happens, then we can all plan on a more level playing field. If that doesn't happen, then then we have to make some choices about how we roll our resources out going forwards. But I think it's on the whole, the industry gets it, and GES are really well placed to go long on this, and that's what we don't want to go long. Nobody wants to go long, but we are resilient enough to go the distance, and I think that's partly how we've run the business in the past. We've not made a loss. We've been careful on the business we've picked up and how we've managed that business. I wouldn't say we're flush, but it's we've been very careful and prudent in how we've managed it, and you need to be, because you're working in a high volume environment. So yeah, I think we're good.
That is no finer time to wrap up, I think. Jason, good. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you very much.